Greetings and welcome to this Z-Files for the last broadcast of the year 2017. We'll be back with the 2018 edition next week, but we're going to be talking with Mayor David Cadle as our guest here, and we've tried at least once a year to have the mayor on and talk about issues in the city, and in particular maybe to what's happened the past year and what's happened, what you got in that little wish book list back there you've got for what's coming up. And glad to have you here again, sir.
Thank you, Cal.
Appreciate
Good
it.
to be here.
I noticed it's kind of quiet in City Hall today. We're on that holiday week when people are working in their breaks. And
getting very close to being shut down.
Looking back, you of course spent many years as a band director. And you're not the only person from the Big Red Machine that served on this government. We had a band director who was, I believe, a city councilman at one time.
And he ran for mayor.
Ran for mayor, okay.
And that was the great Lou Lindsay, who preceded me at Crestview High School. He was a great friend. He passed on some time back. And so since he was in this position, or nearly in this position on the council, and then I came along, I've challenged Jody Dunn to see if he would want to be mayor one day too. He didn't bite.
He's got a pretty doggone big group of students up there that are in his band right now. The Big Red Machine, the band. Wow,
it's great.
It is. I had to observe, and I told the chorus director, I said, you know, on your side of the building over here, a young guy who wants to meet a pretty young girl ought to go get in the chorus, because there was about 20 men and about 100-something young ladies.
Right.
Getting the guys to sing, I guess, is the challenge. Back in 2007, maybe prior to that, when you ran for office the first time, what made you think you wanted to be the mayor of the city? And what were you expecting to happen?
Well, actually, I wasn't looking to run for mayor. I was approached by several businessmen and former mayor George Whitehurst and Floyd Shaw and several others, and who, as soon as I had retired from Crestview High School, they approached me about running for office. And I took about 5 or 6 months. I told them I'd have to think about it and pray about it, and started trying to become as versed as I could be on the issues that are facing the city. And finally decided to jump into the middle of it. And boy, was that an experience. And it has been ever since. Getting into politics is a whole different animal.
Yeah, that last election you had was a barn burner almost. Some of us would describe it as.
Yeah, I'll describe it in several different ways.
So that means you are now in your 10th year?
Yes, actually in my 11th year.
11th year now.
And actually, about a year ago, I became the second longest serving mayor of the city of Crestview. Okay. There was another mayor who had 10 years, and I can't remember the name right now, but I've gone past that. And I have no intention of serving as long as George Whitehurst did, which is 24 years. Well, he did it in
he
started young.
He started young and did it in phases also.
That's right.
He had really retired, and there was a project involving the old L&N Railroad's Yellow River Railroad line from Crestview to Florida. And every time you drive up that road, folks, and you go to where the new Publix is, and you go to Sears, and you go to the banks and the eye doctors and all the other businesses between 90 and Industrial Drive, you can say thank you, George.
Thank you, George.
Because he's the one that pushed for that to be a street.
Instead of a bike path.
Instead of a bike path and a walking path. And we have to count up someday how many businesses, how many total employees there are along that street.
Oh, man.
And how much business is done.
It's grown so much. Street. It's such an important byway within the city too, and I think you probably know, most of our citizens know, that there's still a lot more growth that's going to be taking place on Industrial Drive, and we're excited about that in the future as we see those businesses seeing the opportunity of that North Crestview area. Okay, and again, we hear about everything that's being built just north of Crestview, going out along the river area, of course, along the Yellow River. Several larger developers are starting projects, and I know that I talked with Doug Sims at Auburn Water, and they're having a very large growth of new customers, and that's their water territory out there a good bit. And even though those are not residents of the city of Crestview, it has a large impact. All those hundreds of homes that are coming in that area, those folks hopefully will be shopping in Crestview. And one thing we know, they're all going to be driving on Highway 85, and we're glad to have them in the area but still there's problems to be taken care of with that artery there.
Well, of course, the transportation, as the city has grown, 1990 it was 9,000 people. Officially, the government number is, I guess, right close to 25,000 now.
It's very close, yes.
Yeah.
I haven't got the latest numbers, but we're at 25,000. It doesn't look that we're going to slow down too much anytime soon. With there's a lot of housing developments taking place within the city of Crestview also.
Right. And actually, we know that from the Circle study UWF has schooled us for me every other year, 5 miles from the WAAZ Tower, which is right up there by Whitehurst Powell Funeral Home, although it was there before he was, I think, come to think about it, because the radio station was only here in 54, and he was here shortly after that. But anyway, from that tower, at the corner of First and Lindbergh, if you go out in a 4-mile circle, and that circle just hits the P.J. Adams 85 traffic light, there's 44,000 people.
That's right.
And if you go out 10 miles, there's over 60,000. And that 10 miles really is a lot of what is Crestview. Everybody in that 4 miles probably has a Crestview mailing address.
That's
and a
correct.
driver's license from Crestview, Florida. And then some even a little bit beyond that will still have a Crestview rural route mail address before they get up to the Laurel Hill or over to the Baker area.
That's correct. And we have to remember, too, that everything that we do within the city of Crestview has an impact on those people who have a Crestview address but are not inside the city limits.
Right.
And even though we're thinking about the citizens within the city limits, we have to realize that there's impacts upon those folks too.
Right. Well, it's again the nature of having the wonderful military base in our area, therefore restricts us to how many highways you can have going north and south. We've got one, and that little spur out of Niceville to Mossy Head, which goes mostly over into Walton County pretty well on 285, and that's it.
That's it.
And there's twice as much traffic on 85 as there is on Interstate 10.
That's correct. I've seen the numbers, and that is true.
Yeah. Now, you've been following, of course, some of the stuff that's been happening in transportation discussions, and I'm sure that's always going to be one of the questions you get. Well, what are you doing about Highway 85 traffic? And I know what the answer is, but people need to know there's, only so much the city can do.
I only hear that question a few times a day. But as we know that Highway 85 is the problem and will continue to be the problem for some time. Now, of course, it all depends on what the state of Florida decides to do with that highway. And there have been some conversations about 6-laning the highway. However, if you 6-lane up to the Shoal River Bridge and everything, we're still going to have that problem there. It may be relieved some by 4-laning of P.J. Adams Parkway. If we got the new interchange onto I-10 out that way, that would help some too. But I think unless we can get the two bypasses taken care of, which we're looking at the future, we're still going to have a problem for some time to come. Now, we've been in conversations, and several, the county and others, with Eglin Air Force Base. And their mission is critical, and we're very much aware of that. We take into consideration everything that they feel might be a hindrance, encroaching upon the Eglin land there. But they also the people at Eglin are very aware too that in case of an evacuation from a hurricane, we've been very fortunate. We haven't faced one of those for several years. But if you remember the last time there was an evacuation, it was a disaster. And it would be even worse now because there's so many more people. They realize that their airmen and soldiers in that area would have to come this way too, also to evacuate. And it's a dangerous situation. And
the sailors and the Navy guys and the Marines.
Everybody.
Marines, and Coast Guard, everything is on our base now. And indeed it is. And of course, as things change out there in the world, and things that can happen, we'd have no doubt that some of our young guys and ladies from this area, from this very base, get involved in going to those places to serve.
They sure do, and we don't always hear about the danger that those folks are in, but our prayers are always with them and their families, and we thank them for their service to our country. None of us would be here today if it wasn't for the bravery and courage of those men and women.
Right. Well, there's 2 pots of money because of the BP oil spill that the various counties get. One is the what is it? Not resource. Yeah, right. That's the name. I just read it this morning in Commissioner Boyle's newsletter. But that one is a couple of $1 million a year to the county that they can allocate to projects. And I remember going down to some of those meetings as they were working on just getting an application done. And I mean, hey, they did more in a year this year on the tax bill than that committee did in 2 or 3 years just getting an application done. But the Triumph Board is a new board that is handling the big money that the Attorney General's office won in the lawsuit against BP, and that's over 10 years, supposed to be $1.5 billion ultimately. There's $300 million in a bank account, I guess somewhere in Panama City, for their temporary office, although they are now going to have an office in Destin to work out of for those that need to be there. And they have, brought on board some sharp people. And they have 120 something applications already in, and this is just 9 of those 120 right here in my hands. And they may have been added to. This was the original 9 from Okaloosa County, and a good bit of these affect the Crestview area.
Yes, they do.
The county is asking for funding for the Bob Sykes Water Reclamation Facility, which is, they have a wastewater treatment plant on the east side of the runways out there, and that's so they can then also try to get money to extend the water and sewer service further east. And of course, we've heard the news of this piece of land out there that the county took an option on about 1,600 acres of prime industrial property, which they have the option to buy or get a new buyer for. And some people will, well, it's not in Crestview. Well, you don't really want an airport in your city limits anymore.
No, you really don't. And whatever happens out there has a major impact, because if we bring in some industry that hires a lot of people, a lot of those folks are going to live in Crestview, and they're going to shop here. This is one of the greatest decisions the Okaloosa County Commission has done recently to have that option on that land of that 1,600 acres and to put the infrastructure out there. The lack of infrastructure has kept us from securing a lot of interested industrialists and corporations who would like to come here. And I think we're going to see, as soon as that takes place, that infrastructure, the water and sewer is in place, I think we'll see some building out that way.
And the eastern bypass that's been proposed, and Mike Wing, who we both know, had told me when I showed him a proposal that the folks from Anderson, Columbia had brought to the TPO, and now the TPO has put that on one of their let's study it top things to look at. Calls for, and where the state already owns the land was a good part. When you leave the Show River Bridge, you go up, just like 110 is in Pensacola, highways in Tampa, and a lot of other places. You elevate a road above land you already own. There are very few, I talked with my Wayne Seal about this, very little in utilities in that median, in the middle, and the cost of adding 2 more lanes, a lane on each side of 85 from the river to 90 would be unbelievable billion, because of the right-of-way, all the buildings that are there, all of the utilities that have to get moved. So going up to I-10, turning east on the south side of I-10 out to about where Okaloosa Lane is,
right.
And then going over, not an interchange, but just coming over and landing where Okaloosa Lane, part of it is still dirt, but there's more homes being built there.
That's right. They're
two
building out there
two
too.
new schools out there. From that point, going as a 4-lane all the way up basically the Okaloosa Lane path, or somewhere in that corridor, to the west of the airport, and the county owns a good bit of land there between 90 and Airport Road, and that would be adjacent to their industrial district that is on the airport, and then going on and coming back out on the north side of 85. So that would give an eastern bypass. So the people who live on the east side and who want to just get home today, they'll come back to a restaurant or a car dealer later when they want to buy something. They would get off the road, and they wouldn't be on that stretch of 85 between the river and on Highway 90, or even to the north end. And at the north end, what we've seen with the Publix grills, the more shops up there, the Wendy's, which seems to be busy all the time already. And I told them, I met the owner about advertising, I said, you just check here, we won't need to even think about that for maybe 6 months. We're here, and all that stuff that is happening, as we said, north of Crestview, that's part of, they're going to have to get through Crestview to go back and forth.
Well, I've been surprised hearing the excitement when I tell folks about the Dairy Queen wanting to come up there, and It's the greatest thing since Chick-fil-A.
And now we know that last commission meeting or council meeting, the site plan was approved for the
Chick-fil-A. Yes, we need to make that clear because the city, this has been ready to go for a long time. The corporation or the folks who own the local Chick-fil-A, it's their decision as to when to move forward. And there's going to be a lot of work going on there. The demolition crew for the old Ryans is supposed to start right away, taking that building down. And of course, you know, right behind that, the Fairfield Inn and Suites is going up. So if you try to drive around that way, there are a lot of construction trucks and a lot of busyness going on there. So,
are we hearing anything else? Are you getting any tips of anything interested in that chunk of land immediately west of there where the old flea market was?
haven't heard anything for a long time. I know that the original folks, Watkins Retail out of Atlanta, had stayed in contact for quite some time,
right,
questioning it. I talked to Wayne Steele this past week, and he hasn't heard from him in a while. So we're not quite sure what's going to happen there.
I know that Bob Peck, who was one of the guys that came here, still was reading my Z file. I see my little return that he's reading it, and from time to time he sent me a comment back, but it's been a while.
That's
But
right.
it would be good to see what happens out there. Of course, the big challenge now facing city government next year is how you're going to handle the charter, redoing the city charter of the city of Crestview.
That's right. At the recent council meeting, decided to put that on the ballot. There was some discussion about doing a mail-out ballot on the proposed charter change, going going to a city manager form of government. And Paul Lux, our Okaloosa director or supervisor of elections, told us that if we did a mail-out ballot, we may only get about 10% voting. However, if we wait 3 months and do it in the August primary, we'll have a lot more people there ready to vote. And it's very important that we get as many people to vote as we possibly can on this issue. And we know how low the turnout was the last couple of times. So
Right.
please,
You know, you'll have a governor's race, all state House representative candidates, of course, your United States congressional candidates. There'll be a race for the U.S. Senate probably next year. Looks, you know, we'll see who does it. Rumors are the expectation that the governor may try to run for Bill Nelson's seat. And then, of course, you'll have county races in next year, and some of the, and then so there'll be a lot on that ballot.
well, I tell you what, the council has decided also is that they do not want to do what we've done in the past by accepting a charter change. It's either yes or no, take the whole thing or nothing at all. And they're looking at different ways now to maybe place at least 2 different items on the change that would make it work. So that hasn't been decided what that would be yet. But going to be trying to be a little bit more time to spend on educating the folks what the current charter is and what the new charter would be.
Right. Well, that would get, you know, if you're waiting until next August, you will have, you know, a good 8-month period to be doing some, here to explain what it all is for people to, and, you know, I think there ought to be a way that somewhere they could be able to easily read a copy of the current charter and have highlighted in yellow everything that's going to be deleted, that's out of date and not needed, and then another one which would show a complete new charter. But then here is, and I'll show this on the screen right here, and when on the video part, I'll blow this up on the video screen. This was the 2015 municipal election. It was the March election, and there were 3 council seats open, and you had to vote for 1 in each seat. Down there they have just seats.
Yes, Fort Walton Beach.
Right. And they also, on their ballot, had 7 charter changes. And one of them was council seats to be elected at large. And that passed with 1,159 yes votes and 663 no. So from the next city election in Fort Walton Beach, the council seats will be at large rather than having to live in a specific district. Like we have here, you live in one of 5 precincts. In reality, our 5 precincts are our 3 precincts.
3 precincts.
3 precincts are nowhere near equal in population.
No, they're not.
I mean,
Quite a bit of difference.
I'm worried that someday somebody's going to challenge the city. The one man, one vote rule does not exist in Crestview. There's a certain percentage of closeness you need to be. I think the county commission and school board district seats are all somewhere around 30,000 in each district. So that's why they have weird drawings, because of the big chunks of land where there aren't many people. In the city of Crestview, it's okay, but we know that the area from west of 85 and south of 90, it's probably the biggest in population.
That's
and I'm
right.
going to bet you the north one is somewhere in contention, everything north of 90, and then the east district
That'll be the smallest.
probably is smaller in number. So if that, I don't know if the new charter leaves them in districts. I think it's still there.
It does leave them in
And that's
where
there,
it is now.
right there. But that could be changed.
It could be.
You could make a change to that. A residency requirement from, this was Fort Walton, their mayor and council were not required to live inside the city limits. They are now. 95% of the voters said they should live in the city limits on that question. A term limit to the office of mayor. They did not have, 85% of the voters said yes, there should be a 2-term limit down there for mayor. So that was not dealt with in our charter. Establishing how meeting dates and times should be set, and the amendment would have them meet as prescribed but not less than twice monthly. And the voters went 59% yes for that. They would have to have 2 meetings a month, and the flexibility to increase or decrease the amount needed based through resolution only. So they still have the ability to say,
Sure.
hey, we don't need a meeting on the day before Christmas or New Year's. And then they updated, and this would be a one big one, update or remove language in the charter and renumber the sections. And that's the big portion of what's being done to the
That's
city
true.
of Crestview.
That's true.
Then they wanted to eliminate the cap on filing fees for candidates for city office, and that one got a no vote by 922 no and 903 yes, so that was very close. But there is still a cap on the filing fees. And the other one was requiring unanimous vote or referendum of the council to dissolve the police or fire department. And that one went by 70% or more yes, that they either have to have a unanimous vote of the council or a referendum of the voters
Yes.
to dissolve either of those. So the Crestview Charter certainly could be, and that's something you still have time to do in the
Yes,
council.
there'll be time
with
to tweak it.
Suggestions maybe from your League of City Attorneys and your local attorney as to which are the key questions. And to me, it's got to be whether or not the city clerk shall remain an elected office or an office hired by the council. And the other is whether or not to adopt a city manager form of government. Now I know you've done some other news interviews where pretty much you've explained what you think are the logical reasons, and you've experienced enough now in 11 years. You've done one thing, I know that early on, bringing the department heads together where they actually talk to each other on a regular
Exactly
basis.
right.
That wasn't happening. But still, there are 2 departments that report directly to the mayor and have been for years. That's fire and police, public safety, and then all the other report to the council, and then finance to the city clerk.
That's right.
But it's so, and then and not to the council. So if you were going to tell people what you think of city manager,
Well, I
type of
firmly
government.
believe that there should be a consolidation of leadership within the city. City manager is one of those ways to do it. I know that some people have advocated a strong mayor, but I will tell you that in Pensacola, when they went that route, the first thing that mayor did was hire a city manager.
He just took
report
him
to
and
him.
brought him over to work for him.
So whatever the public wants, I tell you that this city has grown so much. We have 221 employees, and the things that are coming before these departments, what they need, there needs to be a centralized leader to handle these types of problems that we're facing.
Right. And somebody who is professionally
Trained.
in preferably the laws of Florida, the municipal laws of Florida, and has kept up on it. And you've had some other city managers from other cities, in particular, the young gentleman who's got that job in Fort Walton, talk to the council, and then they pointed out the event you have to have a $35 million a year business needs more than so many equal sharing kind of bosses running the whole thing.
That's true. You'd be amazed at how many calls that I receive, people unhappy about different things. It may be about something about the parks or about the water bills or anything like that. Those all go to different people are in charge of that. And the mayor isn't in charge of that, just public safety. But there needs to be consolidation. There needs to be one leader, I think, that reports to the council.
Okay. So when is the next time that your name might be back on the ballot? I'll let you use the word might be.
I'm telling you that it's too far to even speculate about that. But the next election for seats and for the mayor is in March of 19.
Okay. So then the referendum would have been to the voters on the 8th of August, and then you will know if the referendum passes, parts of what you do would stay the same maybe until the next election. Then your job and the city clerk's job possibly.
Yes, you no matter what happens there, you're able to fill out your term with those responsibilities that you have. But see, if that was to change in August, then we would know that they have to take a little bit of time to find. If it was a city manager,
right.
They have to interview people and bring them in and see what, and you have to talk about salary and that sort of thing. So they could be ready to go on the 1st of April, when the new year begins for new officials.
Gotcha. Well, we'll see what happens.
Yes, sir.
In the meantime, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you too.
By the time you've seen this, he's already had that Merry Christmas. And Happy New Year to all of you and to the community. And Mayor Cadle will be back as the year progresses.
Thank you, sir. I look
Hopefully
forward
you'll
to
have
it.
some more announcements, some more things that are going to be opening up.
There's some things on the horizon, which I can't talk about yet.
Okay, we'll be looking for them. And that's this edition of the Z Files here at Crestview City Hall in the conference room.